Welcome to Transformation with Martine. Martine Emmons is a transformational life coach who broke free from childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and overcame cancer to become a powerful force of healing and hope for others. Martine describes traumatic events as fierce emotional tsunamis. They can leave impending doom and destructive tidal waves of emotions that hit you when you least expect it. Martine helps her clients dive into the depths of their trauma and pain as she stands fiercely advocating for them to shine a light on those experiences and find the lesson in the pain. She serves as a beacon of hope that guides you to see the strength, lessons, and purpose that can be born from the pain. You can feel alive with purpose again when you awaken your dormant strength, step into your power with a sense of peace, and discover a new wave of hope with the right tools and support. Martine and her guests are here shining their lights today through empowering stories of hardship and transformation to inspire you to find hope and to see that there is a beautiful blue ocean of serenity, happiness, and fulfillment in your future. Transformation with Martine.
Welcome everyone to Transformation with Martine. That's me. This is where we conquer and overcome everything and compromise nothing. And I am so excited today. Every Friday, I'm excited because I love this show. I love bringing you guests that have overcome so many different things and are just resilient people, and they've created so many amazing things. And this month, and actually today, is a year that I've been doing the show, and it's been awesome interviewing so many amazing people and connecting with so many people as well. So for those of you who don't know, my show is every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And my show is about resilience, as I said, and all the guests that I invite on here believe, like I do, that we as humans are resilient and we can get back up from anything. So today I am so excited to have on my show today, Sean Smith. He is my mentor from the very start. I have got all my trainings from him, except for my health coach certification in the beginning. All my trainings have been from him, and I am privileged and honored to be a part of his master coach team. Thank you. And so without further ado, Sean, please introduce yourself.
Oh, well, it's great to be here with you. And it's exciting that this is a year for you. I remember when this was just a thought and you were wondering if you could venture out and lead and be a podcast host. And so to watch you grow is amazing. Thank you for the opportunity to be on here. Yeah, I've been in this world for 17-ish years, this world of personal development. And I love that you use the word resilient. I would say the main thing that I've learned over all these years is that resilience is the most important muscle to build. And so we can dive into that. But I've been coaching for all those years. I've been speaking for all those years. I recently became an author. We'll talk about that a little bit. I've started to become a lot more creative. I've done a few TEDx talks, which were both spoken word poems, and I've started to write a lot more poetry and deliver poetry. And I've started to get a lot more interested in screenwriting and acting and, you know, some more of the creative use of my talents. But the majority of what I've been doing is coaching and trying to understand what makes us do the things that we do and what makes us not do the things that we want to do. And I love what you said, conquer anything and compromise nothing. I might have changed the words a little bit, but the essence of that.
It's all good.
I love those two words being juxtaposed right together. So that's what I've been trying to study for the longest time is, you know, we have the most amazing, powerful human brain that can really, truly do anything. And so why do so many of us sabotage, and why do we have all these fears? And ultimately, how can we shift into living the life that we all want to live? So that's a little bit about my journey.
Absolutely. So it started basically at the age of 13, though, when you were nearly killed by your neighbor. Yikes.
Yeah. So I was, you know, on my path that I was on. And when I was 13 years old, I was riding my bicycle to school and I swerved to avoid getting hit from another car. And I swerved into the slow lane of a pretty heavily trafficked street. And so the car was going about 50 miles an hour and didn't have time to even put on his brakes. It ended up being my next door neighbor, which was just a wild coincidence. But that day and the experiences, and then later that night when I was in the hospital and they did experimental surgery on me, it really gave me the taste of mortality. And I realized that even though I was high on life at the time, I was excited, a lot of great things were happening in my world, I could have been taken out just like that. And so I made a decision to not take any breath for granted as best as I could, and not settle for mediocrity, and knowing that we've got one shot, not knowing when it's going to end. I want to live while I'm here. So it would be nice if that was just a flip of a switch, and I've done that my entire life, but I haven't. But I made that promise to myself as a 13-year-old boy, which was 35 years ago now. That changed. I mean, literally changed my life. I stopped hanging around certain friends. I started looking at my parents differently, success, money, like all these things differently. I started to be a lot more interested in goal setting and personal development. And then that led into all the things that I mentioned. I started my own company in 2006, and I've been doing it full time ever since. So yeah, it goes all the way back to those roots.
I think that's amazing at 13, though, to get that lesson. Like, yeah, that's no fun to be in an accident like that. It must be terrifying for your parents, not to mention you. But to actually get that knowledge at that point, when most people, they're so much older before they get that. Like, we never know when our time's up.
And 35 years ago, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media. So our worlds were even a lot smaller than they are now. And yeah, it is the biggest gift that I was ever given, is the idea that, I mean, of course I knew intellectually we're all going to die. That wasn't new information, but I had never touched death. Nobody close to me had died. I didn't have the experience. I had never had any kind of near-death experience. So to be on death's doorstep like that, and then to be given the grace to walk off of it and re-enter life, is the biggest, most sacred gift that I could have been given. And I remember in the evening of that night when I was in the hospital, December 17th, I'll never forget the date, as of course you could imagine. I remember that night. I imagine looking back on my life, like having made all kinds of choices that I wish I wouldn't have, and looking back and dealing with regret. And I remember it was like I was imagining having this conversation of my life having gone a certain way. And I asked, what if I wouldn't have gotten into drugs and alcohol? And what if I wouldn't have gotten into gangs when I was young? And what if I wouldn't have done this? And what if I would have applied myself in school? What could I have become? And that question, I mean, it still to this day turns my stomach over a little bit. It was that question that caused me to really see life in a completely different way, with more intentionality, more awareness. And I just never wanted that imaginary conversation to become a real one at some point in time.
Yeah. What it makes me think of, and I'm sure you'll remember one of our events, and you did in the coaching world, I mean, most of us call it like a breakthrough session. And you did that with one of our people. And she was very similar story to me. And she had been molested, terribly molested for years and years and years. And she just, I mean, this was like the very beginning of the event, and my first live one with you. Well, not first, but your own event.
Yeah.
And whoa, I mean, that just like got the room going right away. But because I had the similar thing, and she was like, why did God let this happen to me? What was wrong with me? And I was, and for years I thought the same thing. What was wrong with me? Why wasn't I protected? But you told her that there wasn't anything wrong with her. Her light was just too bright. That changed my life. And I know it changed her life, because then I thought, okay, well, I do have a purpose. I do have something here to offer. I do have something. And my gosh, I'm not going to waste any more of my life.
Mm.
You know,
That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for represencing that.
Yeah, that's like these gifts come in forms sometimes that we don't want, but man, it's so good.
And the biggest lessons that I've always learned have always come through the deepest adversity and the most intense struggle or pain or trauma. Yeah. And yet, of course, we don't want to have experienced those things, but they really are invitations to learn something about ourselves. And quite often what I've found with, I've attracted a lot of people who have a similar experience, who've got abuse in their background. Yeah. And I didn't know why for a long time. Now I know why, and we can get into that maybe a little bit later. But what I found is that the most common shackle that so many women primarily have is what you alluded to: what's wrong with me? And as long as that's the decision that we made, or that a human makes, something must be wrong with me, that's why this is happening, then they'll spend the rest of their life trying to answer that question. And the challenge or the problem with that is it's not the right question. Versus whatever the shift can be, it could be, what is this meant to teach me? Or what muscles did I build because of this? Or who can I help because of this? It changes the way we hold on to our experiences in the past. And the beautiful thing, which is obviously true with your story and this woman that you were talking about, is that it can be done. And that's the whole idea of transformation, which is the title of the show, right? It actually can be done. We can shift and literally change the way we experience the planet. And sometimes it's just changing the questions that we're asking.
Yeah, I love that. So we're going to take a break in a moment. Two things. One, do men wonder like women do, what's wrong with me? And two, where can everybody find you? So both those things.
I'll think about that. That's a good one.
Okay.
We'll dive in.
Okay.
Do men. You're asking me to give some man secrets away.
Yes, I am. Yes.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'll think about it on the break, and we'll dive into that.
So where can people find you?
Everywhere online, I'm Coach Sean Smith. That's my website. That's my handle on all the social media. SEAN for Sean.
Right on. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be right back with more transformation. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine. My guest today is Sean Smith, and we've been having a good old conversation so far. And we left with talking about what, a lot of times when things go wrong with us or abuse happens to us, a lot of women, as Sean said as well in his teachings and stuff, is that a lot of women wonder what is wrong with me. And I asked him, do men wonder what is wrong with me as well?
Yeah, I've just been sitting with that question since you asked it. It's like a breathtaking question. I would say my immediate answer is yes, but from a different perspective.
Okay.
We as men, of course, I'm just going to speak from my own personal experience and a lot of the conversations that I've been in. And I don't mean to brush everybody with the same, the same brushstroke, but we as men are primarily programmed to be the breadwinner, the aggressor, the hunter, the doer, the provider, so we seek our masculinity and therefore our value in our doing and in our choosing. I think women, when a relationship doesn't go well, or you get cheated on, or somebody lies to you, or somebody abuses you, whatever that traumatic experience is, I think it's from the opposite perspective of being chosen. So like, what did I do wrong to not be chosen? especially in a relationship sense, or what did I do wrong to be picked on or to be abused? And I think the female programming and the feminine programming is to assume responsibility, like it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
We as men, we don't ever want to admit anything is our fault, because that equals weakness. It equals vulnerability. It does mean something is wrong with us, but from a different angle, like it's emasculating for us to think that something is wrong with us. Now, when boys are abused or we are bullied or something like that, we're on the opposite side. If we are in that victim seat, there is a similar question, what did I do wrong? But our reaction usually, according to what I think is macho male programming, is how can I make sure that never happens again by being tough and by being strong? And unfortunately, we then do the same thing to somebody else. Like bullies were usually victims almost all the time, actually. Right. Bullies were usually victims. Abusers were victims first. And then they decide to take it from somebody else, right? Whatever they feel like was taken from them, dignity or innocence or whatever the case is. I don't think that's generally the programming for women. Women, it's like, okay, you're not good enough, you're not lovable. And I think there's this patriarchal programming that if you as a woman are good enough, if you're lovable, if you're pretty enough, if you are thin enough, if you are what we as men want from you and for you, that will look good under our arms or in our society or in our families, then we'll choose you. So I think there's this higher programming that you are supposed to be what we want for you. And therefore, when you are in that victim seat for whatever capacity, whatever intensity, it's like, oh, you need to be better according to how you're supposed to be. Whereas when we are victimized, it's we're not man enough. And that's why we just got taken advantage of. So that's not going to happen ever again. We're going to become more of a man, according to the macho programming. So that's my initial thought. I don't know how that lands for you.
Oh, it does. It definitely does. Just thinking about my life and my husband now, my ex-husband. I mean, I get it.
So just to add on to that, and something that you were saying off air, I think, it's what you said on the first break or in the first section, when the woman, like the realization was that her light shined so bright.
Yeah.
Men, when we have insecurity, we don't want anybody to see the insecurity. And so if you, it's literally, it's like you carrying around a flashlight, right? If you are showing your light, and that could be in the form of purity or innocence or joy or just fun, if you are shining your light, if I feel like it's going to expose my insecurity, I'm going to try to put that light out. I'm not going to try to figure out where my insecurity is and take responsibility for it and try to heal my wounds. I mean, maybe eventually we get to that point and make that decision. But for the most part, our choice immediately in the moment, especially coming from that wound, is let me dim the light. And so what that means is, let me shut you up. Let me shut you down. Let me hurt you. Let me make sure that you don't shine, so you don't expose me. That's basically what it is. I wrote a poem about this. Can I just read a stanza or two from this poem?
Yeah. Your poems are so good.
I went super internal with this conversation. And I did a one-man show on my relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
I think most men have mommy issues that we don't talk about, and we won't tell anybody that we have, but we do. And so I confronted my mommy issues basically, and it caused me to look at my masculinity and what does it mean for me to be a man. And it opened up this awareness that I never had, and we don't talk about it as men primarily. And it led me to this, what I just tried to explain, that I was actually threatened by my mom's love. I was threatened by her unconditional love because of my wounds. And it makes no sense that unconditional love from a mom would threaten me, but it did. And so in all of that, I developed this character of who I saw my wound through and who I saw my wound as. And it's like a werewolf character.
Yes.
And I wrote a poem about it, turned it into a song actually, and it was a big part of this one-man show. So I just want to read a couple lines here.
Yeah, go. This is good.
The most valid question of all is, why do these men do what they do? Are they just contaminated, toxic, with no end to the venom to spew? As a safe and secure man now, I can't speak about all men for certain, but as a former vicious bully, allow me to pull back the curtain. You see, of anything divine, this savage wound is terrified. If your light shines, you threaten to expose all that I'm trying to hide. So I'd rather put it out than confront my insecurity. I grew to despise the presence of innocence and purity. And human eyes supposedly are the windows into our soul, but when you get too close to me, mine feels empty and unwhole. In the eye contact shows me things I wish weren't true. And I hate what I see, that reflection of me. So I need you to be miserable too. I'll stop there, but that kind of encompasses this conversation into a few poetic lines. And realizing that, for me, changed my entire life, because I recognized that I was using my insecurity as ammo to hurt my mom specifically, but other people in my life. And rather than try to resist the temptation, what would happen if I actually healed the insecurity? And that's the journey that I went on, very similar to the journey that you've been on, with different circumstances, obviously, and details. But when we heal those insecurities, then we don't have the desire to hurt other people, because hurting people hurt people, right? That's for sure. It's the pass-through pain concept.
For sure. No, that poem actually was huge for me, because there's another incident. I don't know if you remember, but you were preparing for, I want to say it was a TEDx talk. And I'd asked if you talked to me for a bit, because I was in Washington with my dad, and it was a terrible, terrible time. And I asked to talk to you, and you told me to play that. And I did. I took my dad's car and just went around and just listened and listened and listened and listened. And this might lead really good into your book, all about you and your daughter relationship, daddy-daughter relationship. Because my dad, I have finally come to the place of acceptance. I had a very rough childhood with him, yet he does the best he can. Like, he sent me flowers for Mother's Day out of the blue. It was really cool. And he does make these efforts now. And once I've realized that he can only give what he can give, it's kind of changed our relationship, and it's healing. And I know, because I've done some healing, it's starting to just kind of heal the overall relationship, which is probably what that poem did for you and your relationship.
Yeah. Healing is a better choice than hoping people will change. And sometimes that's us. We hope that we will change, but we don't heal the pain. We don't confront the conflicts. We don't expose our insecurities. And we're all insecure as humans. It's literally impossible to go through the human journey and not be wounded and not be traumatized, right? I think we need to understand that trauma is not a level of intensity. I think we reserve the word trauma for deep, deep pain, like abuse and molestation, things like that. Trauma could be changing schools a lot because you moved around when you were younger. Trauma could be your best friend didn't want to be your best friend anymore. You know, trauma is just basically when what we want to happen didn't happen and we don't feel safe or we are disrupted. That's trauma. And most of us have a lot of micro traumas that build up so much that it actually controls our lives. And if we learn how to embrace that and deal with our traumas, we can actually heal anything, really.
Absolutely. And, it is interesting when you said that about trauma for different people. I remember doing market research and asking, what does trauma mean to you? Like, what does the word even mean to you?
Yeah.
And one of my longtime friends, I've known her since I was probably 22, 23. And she said, my biggest trauma was when my boys went to college. And I'm like, wow. I mean, when I think about all kinds of different traumas, that was your biggest one. Boy, are you lucky, even though I can't judge somebody else's. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Trauma comparison doesn't do much good for us.
It doesn't do any good. No right to judge that anyway. So we are going to take a break, everyone. And if you have the time in your job or whatever is going on for you right now, if you want to call in and ask any questions of Sean, the number is 800-930-2819. And I would love to come back, Sean, talk about your book and whatever else we come up with.
Perfect.
Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine. This is where we conquer everything and compromise nothing. My guest today is Coach Sean Smith. He's my coach, and he's amazing. And we've been talking about self-esteem and trauma and healing and so many good things. So we left off talking about self-esteem and healing. And so, Sean, we had talked about before about self-esteem boils down to really one thing. And what would that be?
Yeah, it does, especially for women. It really comes down to a single question. And just to bridge this gap a little bit, as you just mentioned, I love the tagline, right? Conquer everything. The reason that I believe and have learned that we can conquer everything is that healing is really about removing layers and removing stories or removing beliefs that then reveal what already is there. The trap that a lot of us get into is thinking that in order to heal or in order to raise our self-esteem or raise our confidence, we need something to be added to us. We need a new skill set. We need a realization. We need some kind of just like something to be added. And I call this the addiction to addition. We think that we've got because we believe that we're inadequate, we need something added on top of our inadequacy. In reality, it's the opposite. We are adequate. We are valid. We are enough. And then these wet blankets get put on top of us through all the experiences that we have in childhood. And we sometimes as adults as well, but primarily it's in childhood. And so then we're walking around with all these layers on, but those layers are not us. Those layers are really the overcompensation for whatever pain we experience, right? Whether it was embarrassment or deep, intense trauma. And so the act of healing is actually removing the layers that are not us. And I think it's really important for people to get that. Because if you think that you are inadequate and you are the problem, that means you need to change. But healing is really about unchanging. It's going back to what is already there that's underneath all of the layers. And so the concept of self-esteem, I think, is a really interesting one for us to understand here in that conversation. Nobody actually has low self-esteem and nobody has high self-esteem. Our self-esteem is finite. There's nothing that can lower it and there's nothing that can increase it. The difference is how much access do we have to it? So like if we were to take, some object, right? I got this cup of water here. If we were to take this cup of water, it's got whatever dimensions that it has. And I'm really close to the water. I can grab it, I can drink it, and it looks this size. If I were to take this cup of water and send it 50 yards away from me. The cup of water hasn't changed, but my access to it has now changed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't touch it anymore because it's too far away. But the dimensions of the cup of water are actually the exact same. Our self-esteem is like that. It's not that our self-esteem got lower, it's we got further away from it. We are not accessing it anymore. So that's a really critical point, because now the question isn't how can I increase my self-esteem? It's how can I access the full self-esteem that I have and feel it and connect to it? Because that's a different question, because that question yields to the answer that I need to move toward it. And that is releasing these layers, right? So going back to this question, what I've found in coaching literally thousands and thousands of women over the years, what I've found is almost all problems that entrepreneurial women have. That was all of my clientele, entrepreneurial women, women building businesses at home, mostly in the direct sales world. All the problems that they have are self-esteem problems. They're not confidence problems. They're not skill set problems. They're self-esteem problems, meaning they don't have emotional permission to take the action that they know they need to take, right? Like, you know how to pick up a phone and dial numbers.
Right.
We do it all the time, but certain phone calls you don't want to make. That's a self-esteem issue, because what if they say no, right? So it's the relationship to failure and rejection that causes people to not do things they otherwise could do. That's a self-esteem issue. It's not a confidence issue. If you raise your confidence and you get skill set, but you don't have permission to apply your skill set, then more skills aren't going to matter. So for almost everybody, women primarily, we're dealing with self-esteem. And then what I learned through all the work that I was doing is that when we start talking about a woman's self-esteem, it's pretty much always, like 99% of the time, it's going to boil down to one relationship, which is the relationship, you already mentioned it, with her father.
Yeah.
That's where the root of self-esteem comes from. But then as I continue to coach and continue to talk about this, it got boiled down for me to one question. Is he proud of me? Is your dad proud of you? And I just started recognizing how often that's where we always landed when we got into the dissection of the self-esteem. So now we can simplify this. When little girls are growing up, they're going to ask the question, is daddy proud of me? Not does daddy love me? Not will daddy protect me? Not will daddy stay with mommy? Is daddy proud of me?
Yeah.
You know daddy needs to love you because he's your daddy. But daddy doesn't need to like you unless you are valuable. So if the father does not express pride in his daughter, then it's easy for the daughter to believe, I'm not good enough, otherwise daddy would be proud of me. This is all unconscious. I don't know anybody who remembers making that decision. But now here's where it gets much more challenging. We are not taught as men to express that pride, unless you do something to earn it. Because we as men, we are taught, and we only experience, for the most part, performance pride, which means our dads only told us they were proud of us when we got good grades in school, when we hit a home run, when we made the team, when we did something good. That's when we experienced pride. It's not explicitly told, but it is implicitly learned that pride is reserved for performance. So therefore, we don't know as fathers that you need to know as our children, but specifically as our daughters, we don't know that you need to know we're proud of you regardless.
Yeah.
And we don't know you need to hear those exact words.
Right.
So because we don't know you need that, and because we didn't get that, we don't say it. a lot of times we absolutely feel it. We just don't know to say it. Other times we can't feel it because, as you said earlier, we can't give what we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times the father doesn't have the capacity to even feel pride in himself, and therefore he doesn't feel like he can give it to somebody else. A lot of times it's both, right? So I wrote this book, which is sitting back there. It's cool that I actually have a physical copy here. So I wrote this book called Daddy, Are You Proud of Me?
Mm-hmm.
With an image of my daughter
I love
from
that.
a long time ago. That was probably 16 years ago, if not more.
Wow.
I wrote this book for dads,
Mm-hmm.
basically saying, I've been coaching women for years. They're telling me that their dads didn't say this thing to them, and you didn't know that, just like I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So let me report back to you what your daughters need you to say.
Mm-hmm.
That was the essence of the book. It's like a father's guide to what our daughters need to see, know, and hear in order to have high self-esteem. And a lot of us as men, we won't do this work for ourselves, but we'll learn what our daughters need.
Yeah.
We'll learn what our sons need potentially. So that's my whole intention with this book, is to get men into conversations about what we need to learn, what we need to say, but then what we need to know about ourselves. And while I got them in the book, you know, I want to give them a different experience of masculinity or of themselves, or a new awareness about our programming. So that's how the book was written, but it's taken on a little bit of a life of its own, and we can get into that maybe after the break here.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. This is going to be so helpful to so many, but I mean, I'm excited for it myself, just to learn myself. It's like, even if it's written more for men, it's still helpful to everybody just to see, because we're going to get more of an insight of what's inside of men that we can learn ourselves as women, you know? So yeah, I'm totally excited about it.
Yeah.
So where can people find you again, Sean?
Coach Sean Smith is where I can be found everywhere online. There is a page on my website if anybody wants the first chapter of this book, coachseansmith.com/daddy are you proud, with hyphens in between the words, daddy hyphen are you proud, with hyphens all the way through. And they can get on the list for when this gets released and get the first chapter immediately sent.
Excellent. All right, everyone, we'll be right back in just a few. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine. My guest today is Coach Sean Smith, and boy, we've been having a great conversation. We ended up talking about Sean's book, Daddy, Are You Proud of Me? And one of the things we talked about on break is what happens, and boy, Sean, I'm thinking about, I mean, not only does this fit me, but another one of our colleagues, I know you know who I'm talking about. What happens if your dad doesn't have the capacity to give, like my father?
Yeah.
And or he is gone, which kind of relates to the colleague. Both, actually.
Yeah, it's a really important conversation, because most fathers don't. Not that we don't necessarily have the capacity, but if we do, we don't know we're supposed to say it. So most women will be in the situation where they didn't hear these words from their father.
Mm-hmm.
If your father's still alive, awesome. You know, maybe get the book for him, right? Yeah. But what's happened with this book, even though it was written just for dads, is it has taken a life of its own, because the majority of my clients have all been women. Mm-hmm. So when I started to share the concept of the book, and then as the book started to go through its iterations, the majority of the readers have been women. Mm-hmm. And I didn't plan for this, but what's happening basically is like it's kind of like women are listening in to a coaching conversation I'm having with their dad. Mm. And because of that, this huge awareness is happening. And you are not in the conversation, because it's not between you and dad. It's not with all of the emotional, entanglements that your conversation has. You're just listening to another conversation. And then it becomes like this analogy experience almost, where you're not in, like a metaphor, you're not in the metaphor, but you're listening to it. And then all these things are making sense. And I'm saying, listen, I know how we're programmed. I know we're not told to do this. I get it. And your daughter needs it. And here's why. And I know you might not have the capacity, or maybe you need to do some healing or whatever. So what happens is women are listening to the conversation. And I can't tell you how many times, Martine, people have said, I'm done. I'm healed. Like, I'm good. And they genuinely feel no more resentment, no more anger, genuinely feel forgiveness without a conversation with their dad. Or sometimes they will take that into a conversation with their dad if their dad is still alive, but understanding that the work can actually be done with you. So just because the story was started with something that was said or wasn't said with your father, that's not actually where the self-esteem issue is. The self-esteem issue is with you. And I say that because I want it to be empowering, because there are men out there who are so wounded that they would deny everything that I'm saying, tell me that I'm full of it, tell you you're full of it if you're their daughter, and try to deny everything. Right. And I still want all of you to recognize you still can peel off the layers, because you ultimately are in control. So it boils down to this question, it being self-esteem, but that's not the actual solution. It's just where we get into the deeper conversation. The actual solution is you as a human removing the layers that you've been carrying around. Even if your dad helped you put them on, or your mom helped you put them on, that doesn't mean that they have to be available to take them off. You can heal on your own. And hopefully this book or the concept will help you see how all of it is put together. And then it's like tilling the soil a little bit, right? It's like loosening the soil so that we can uproot those weeds. And it wasn't the intention of the book, truly. And in the book, I actually say, if you're a woman reading this book, I'm only going to talk to you for the remainder of this page.
Yeah.
Keep reading, but I won't address you again, because this is going to be between me and your dad, or me and men in general. Right. And so the bigger application of this concept can heal a lot of relationships, not just father-daughter, but hopefully it will heal a lot of father-daughter relationships from the men understanding and then moving toward the daughter, and or the daughter forgiving, because we just don't know. I don't know what it's like to grow up as a little girl, and you don't know what it's like to grow up as a little boy. So we're starting from ignorance and then hoping that we do right by each other. And it's just, it's really difficult. So it's tender, but it's possible. That's what I want everybody to know. It's possible.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I can't wait for it. And my dad just might be open, he's kind of softening as he gets older. He very well might be. So that's totally exciting. Totally exciting.
And a lot of times when we change any element in a relationship, the relationship changes.
Yeah.
So when you, and I know you've done a lot of work around you and your dad, and so you show up differently. Yeah. You don't trigger a lot of his responses because you've done a lot of the work that has shifted your energy or has shifted your understanding. And I know now you might hear certain things that he's said and it doesn't get into you like it used to, because you understand so much more. So you have done a lot of work to heal the relationship, even without busting out the flip chart and teaching him anything.
Right.
And a lot of your healing actually happens without him being involved at all, and he'll never know. And that's beautiful and powerful to know that we can actually change a relationship by us shifting the ingredients on our side.
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful. I've been blessed to do this work for a long, long time with a lot of people. Yeah. This is the work that gets me choked up, that gets me excited, that causes me to cry the most. This work, healing work between fathers and daughters specifically. Like it's everything. It's so powerful.
There's nothing like witnessing it either as a coach,
right?
The breakthroughs in people. Oh my gosh.
And you now have the capacity to have a lot of those conversations because of the work that you've done and the coaching skills that you've had and all the experience. So good job.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. So tell us a little bit, we just got a couple minutes, but I know there are people that they want to utilize those gifts that, find those, they found the blessings and the lessons now, and they want to utilize that. How would they not only reach you, but I know you have programs. Do you want to share?
Yeah, it's natural for those of us that have some kind of an experience where our life changes. We go like, we want to do that for other people. Yeah. And so that's been my journey as well. My life was profoundly changed in 2005 by a life coach. And right after that, I said, I got to do that work. And so that's what got me into coaching. And over the last 10 years or so, we've developed our own certification programs so that we help people who not just want to heal, and want to transform, but want to be a healing or transformational force on the planet, whether that looks like speaking or writing books or being a coach or all of those together, or just in your family, right? So we have certification programs. Everything can be found on CoachSeanSmith.com. If there's anything that anybody's looking for and you can't find it for whatever reason, I'm easy to get a hold of on social media, or you can send in a message on the website. And my deepest commitment over the last 7 years or so would be, how do we as humans learn how to do this work with humans? How do we pass along that transformation? And my philosophy and my brand is neurotransformation. So what can we do to change our neurology? Like literally release the pain that we've been carrying around and experience joy and happiness that we haven't been experiencing. That can be done in the body. That's when life can truly be lived in a transformed state.
I didn't understand that part about the whole body part. Like, I just thought, well, this is in my head.
You can't until you experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you have.
Amazing.
And now you do.
Yes. Final thoughts?
I'll just share what's on my tongue now is the final words my dad gave to me before he passed. I asked him how I can live his legacy. And he said, Shawnee, just be who you can be, do what you can do, and live a good life.
I love that. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you coming on today and sharing all your wisdom with everybody listening. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Deeply.
That's everything.
And I love you.
I love you. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. And we'll see you again next Friday.
Thank you for listening to Transformation with Martine. Did listening today spark a sense of hope and possibility? Hold on to this feeling and tune in every second and fourth Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific for more inspiring conversations with Martine and her guests. They will show you there is hope, and you are right where you need to be. Martine is dedicated to supporting you right where you are while launching you towards promise, passion, and possibility that leads to the fulfilled life your heart aches for. If you're tired of being stuck, schedule a complimentary consultation with Martine and get on the exciting path towards the life you want to be living. Visit MartineEmmons.com and make your appointment today.